Hello, I've got another episode of Quattro Minuti con Casanova. Today we are at the very origins of Casanova and his whole family. I'm in the Campo San Samuele and in front of the church of San Samuele. Here also is the bell tower from that church, which now has nothing in it. In fact, I saw a Biennale exhibit in it one year. The whole church is now deconsecrated and is used for exhibits. But the stories here are very important to Casanova's family. His parents were married here in 1724, and Casanova was baptized here about a year later in 1725. And his father's name was Gaetano, his mother was Zanetta, and he was an actor, and then he brought his wife into being an actress as well, which her family was not very happy about. But they had their first son, Giacomo Casanova, and brought him here to be baptized. And then there's many more stories that were from this location that also are important to Casanova's life. When he was a teenager, he was studying to be a priest, and he studied with a guy named the Abate Tosello. Tosello would help him work on his sermons. In fact, they would meet at Tosello's house, which is just near here. So Casanova was preparing to do his first sermon. He had taken his initial orders, in fact, took those orders here at this church as well, and then prepared for that first sermon, memorized it, studied, wrote it, and worked on it for a long time. Finally came and gave his sermon, and it was a resounding success. People loved it. In fact, when the collection plate came back around through the church, it was full of money and also love letters. Casanova tells us this very tantalizing detail that one of the letters led him to an indiscretion that he would rather not tell the story of. Darn it, because that's a story I'd really like to hear too. He has so many good ones. So Casanova's head was quite big after this success, and he decided he would do another sermon. And he worked on it for a long time. He consulted with different friends, again the Abate Tosello and his friend, a Senator Malapiero here at the nearby Palazzo. And so Casanova didn't bother to memorize his sermon because he thought he knew it so well at this time. So he came here again to the church of San Samuele and came up to the pulpit to give his speech. Now the problem was that before he came to do his sermon, he dined with a friend nearby, and over lunch he had a glass of wine and another glass of wine, and I think too many glasses of wine, because when he stood there at the pulpit, he realized he was feeling a little bit dizzy and a little bit weak. And the first words started to come out from his sermon, and he realized he had forgotten everything. He knew he was going to be humiliated, and for Casanova that was absolutely the worst thing, was some kind of a public humiliation. So as he writes this in his memoirs, he tells us that he became quite dizzy and faint and collapsed. Now some people say he pretended to collapse so to save himself from the humiliation of not knowing his own sermon. Others say no, really he did collapse, so it's hard to know exactly the truth. But he collapsed, he did, fell on the floor. He was so embarrassed he grabbed a cloak, threw it on, and rushed off to the mainland to just leave for a while until people would forget his humiliation. And that was the end of any kind of an ecclesiastical career for our young Casanova.